What's up, Marvel fans? I'm Steven from the Hills Maniacs, and today I'm going to be looking back at all of the MCU movies and TV series that have come out this year so far, and deciding which one I felt had the best post-credit scene. So, as I'm sure you all know, one of the most intriguing things about every Marvel movie or series that has come out in the past has always been the post-credit scenes that come out after the credits, or even there's been some mid-credit scenes that have been better than post-credit scenes, all those type of things. But it's the things that happen after the movie officially concludes. They have a post-credit scene or a mid-credit scene that either builds towards something that's going to happen in the future, whether it introduces us to some new character that's going to be a villain in the future, or a hero, or something like that, or some new character that's going to play a major role in some way in the MCU somewhere down the road. That's something that Marvel's always been good at. It's one of the most intriguing things about all their movies and series, and which is why today I wanted to kind of take a look back at all the ones from 2022 that have come out so far, because I feel like all of them have been good so far. And since we're halfway through the year, with the conclusion of Miss Marvel and everything else, I decided I'd look at the four that have come out so far and pick out my favorite one that I felt truly impacted the MCU going forward, like the most, or brought the most intrigue to the MCU for me personally. So the shows and movies in question that I'm going to be talking about in this video are, of course, Moon Knight, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Thor: Love and Thunder, and Miss Marvel. All of them have had post-credit scenes. Obviously, the series have had a couple post-credit scenes like throughout in different episodes, but I'm only going to be talking about like the one at the very end. So like Miss Marvel's post-credit scene in the final episode, and Moon Knight's post-credit scene in the final episode. I won't be including if there was any. Like, I think Miss Marvel had one in, like, the first episode where it showed us the DODC was the villain kind of thing. I'm only going to be talking about, like, the final one, because that would technically, if this was a movie, that would be the one where that is the movie and credit scene, And then, of course, Multiverse of Madness and Thor: Love and Thunder are both movies, so they obviously had one or two post-credit scenes. I'm only going to be talking about the one that I felt was the most important and comparing that to the ones from the shows. So I'm basically going to go in order of like when these shows and movies were released. So like Moon Knight was first this year, but Moon Knight's post-credit scene introduced us to Mark Spector's third identity in Jake Lockley. The premise of that show, as you know, is that Mark Spector has associative identity disorder, which is where he basically has multiple personalities or multiple identities living inside his mind, where one does something and the other one then comes out and doesn't have a clue that that one even exists. So, like, for example, Stephen Grant is one of his identities, doesn't even realize Mark Spector exists. He just feels like he has his own separate life with his own separate thoughts and feelings and emotions. And the intriguing thing about this character was, or the intriguing thing about the show in particular, was that we got to see the dynamic between those two different personalities as if they were two different characters interacting with each other. And when it comes to the post-credit scene from the final episode of that series, it's revealed that there is a third identity in Mark Spector's head named Jake Lockley, who seems to be the most violent version of Mark Spector. Like, we kind of see throughout the series, Mark Spector was kind of he was a mercenary, but he kind of had a softer side where he wouldn't kill unless he felt he needed to. Stephen Grant didn't want to kill at all. He was just like a museum worker. And then now we see Jake Lockley introduced in the post-credit scene, where he's basically just remorseless and doesn't care about anybody. He'll do whatever Khonshu says, because we're led to believe that Khonshu, who is the spirit that it kind of controls Mark Spector and gives him the Moon Knight persona and the powers of Moon Knight, we are under the impression that he sort of leaves Mark at the end because Mark says he doesn't really need him anymore. But as it turns out, he's using that third identity in Jake Lockley to exact the vengeance that he wants, which is probably why he latched himself on to Mark Spector in the first place, because he knew he had multiple personalities that he could sort of play around with or use in different ways. And I feel like that sets up an interesting dynamic for if they have a season 2 or whenever we see this character again, with Mark and Steven both being Moon Knight as like a hero and not realizing that there's a third one that's just out to kill and out for vengeance and working for Khonshu and everything else. I think that sets up an interesting premise for a season 2 or a Moon Knight movie or whatever they plan to do next with the character. And then we have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I guess this was more of the mid-credit scene, because that post-credit scene was stupid. But the mid-credit scene shows us Doctor Strange meets this woman who isn't really named in the movie, but I guess in the comics her name is Clea. She tells Strange that he caused an incursion, which, as we find out in this movie, was an event where two universes will collide together, and either one or both will not survive the collision, and one will overtake the other type of thing. He's told that by Reed Richards in Earth 838 when Strange travels through the multiverse. So in the end credits scene, when Clea tells Strange he created an incursion, she opens a portal or something to, I guess, the dark dimension, and she says, "We're gonna fix your incursion," and he's like ready to go. He's got his third eye now and everything else. And that's like the last we see of that, and we're not really told who she is and everything else, but that kind of maybe sets up what Strange is going to be doing in the next movie, or maybe why he hasn't been involved in anything that happened after that in the MCU, like the events of Eternals, I guess, is set after this, or the events of Miss Marvel and Hawkeye and all those things, why Strange isn't involved in anything like that, because he's out chasing these incursions and trying to stop them from causing a collision of the universes and stuff. And it does show us that incursions are now happening, which ties in nicely to if they're planning on having like Kang the Conqueror as the next villain. I think that ties in nicely with that, because he might use these incursions to sort of conquer multiple universes or realities at the same time. And then we have the Thor Love and Thunder post-credit scene where we see Zeus, who was defeated by Thor in this movie. Like, Thor thought he killed Zeus with his own lightning bolt and everything, but it turns out he just injured him. We see Zeus talking to somebody saying, like, the people don't fear gods anymore because they look to their heroes, or these so-called superheroes, for help. And we need them to, worship us and come to us again. And in order to do that, they need to make an example of Thor. He said when Thor Odinson falls from the sky, then they will know true fear, or something along those lines. I'm butchering that probably, but that we find out that Zeus is talking to his son Hercules, who hasn't yet been introduced in the MCU until this movie. So now that kind of leaves us wondering, well, what's next for Thor? Because we know Hercules, if Zeus is sending Hercules out to kill Thor, where does that leave Thor, in the MCU? Is that setting up like the next Avengers movie, maybe like Avengers versus the Gods to protect Thor or something? Is that setting up a Thor 5 or some kind of series? Will we see Hercules again? Like, I like these ones that introduce new characters, because it just shows us how much they keep adding to the MCU, and it gives us a look into what's yet to come and what to look forward to next. And then finally we have the Miss Marvel post-credit scene from the last episode, episode 6, where Kamala is in her room. All of a sudden her bangle, or the wristband that she wears, starts glowing a color that she's not used to. She doesn't know what's going on. All of a sudden she's like flung into her closet, and out walks Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. And I think people are still debating whether or not this means she switched places with Carol Danvers, wherever Carol was in the universe, or if she turned into Carol Danvers like she did in the comics, I guess, or like she kind of looks like Captain Marvel in the comics, I guess, before her final transformation into the inhuman version of herself with her stretchy arms and everything. That's still kind of up for debate right now, but I mean, it's only been a few days. I'm sure when the Marvels movie comes out, we'll be told exactly what happened, but I think that bit of like mystery there kind of leaves some intrigue to not only what is happening with Miss Marvel, but also what's happening with Captain Marvel. What was Carol Danvers up to before this? Did she find the other bangle that we're told exists in somewhere in the universe as well? That we were told there's a second bangle out there, a second wristband. that's connected to this one. So, like, it's being speculated that maybe Carol found it, and as soon as she touched it, she was switched places with Kamala. You know, there's all this sort of intrigue and mystery surrounding it, and we're going to get the answers in the Marvels. It even popped up and said Miss Marvel will return in the Marvels. So we kind of know where her trajectory is going, that it's going to be in this next movie, but we don't know exactly the plot of that movie yet. So I think there's a lot of intrigue there as well. Like I said, all these post-credit scenes sort of add some interest to the MCU. Like, it's got me wondering what's happening next. You know, it's fueling all kinds of fan theories and everything else. But out of these four in particular, I think the one that interests me the most and maybe impacts the MCU as a whole, like overall going forward, is the one from Multiverse of Madness, because I feel like we could end up seeing more incursions down the road in other movies and things like that. Maybe Doctor Strange will start popping up in other things, in post-credit scenes from other things. And I feel like that is the only one that's really setting up their, like, multiversal war that is supposedly coming, that we found out about in the Loki series. You know, we met He Who Remains in that series, which is a variant of Kang the Conqueror. And I think this could be the way to sort of tie into that, where, like I mentioned earlier, I think Kang could use that to conquer multiple realities at once, or maybe that's how he destroys other realities, because these incursions occur. We don't know exactly, like, everything about how an incursion happens quite yet, but I feel like there's enough there where they could introduce more of this type of thing in the MCU going forward. And considering what happened in this movie, like with Wanda Maximoff killing, like, the leader of the X-Men and the Inhumans and all that, there could be, the multiversal war could be between 838 and 616. And that could be there could be an incursion that happens there as well. But I feel like that's the most, like, intriguing one, or the most mysterious one, that gets me looking forward to the future of the MCU. All of these had their own level of uniqueness to them, but I think the Doctor Strange one is the best one we've seen out of these four so far, just because of its mystery and the intrigue that it adds to everything going on in the MCU, and how it will tie in with Kang the Conqueror down the road. That's the thing that they've been building to, I feel like, and the thing that they should be focusing the most on, whereas all these other ones kind of feel like they're just building to solo things. Like, the Miss Marvel one is obviously building to Captain Marvel 2, the Moon Knight one is leading to probably a season 2 of Moon Knight, or whenever we see Moon Knight again, but the one from Multiverse of Madness just feels like one that's going to impact more than just Doctor Strange movies, or whatever Strange is doing next down the line. It's going to start affecting other people in the MCU as well. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. Which of these post-credit scenes do you feel has the most impact on the MCU? Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more Marvel-related content. Thank you for watching the video, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.
Subscribe.